The Gospel according to the 11th chapter of St. John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by the world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he's been there 4 days." And Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Therefore many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." And one of them, called Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." He did not say this on his own. And as high priest that year, he had prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. Not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. The gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. If at this time you have young ones with you who'd like to go and join Heidi for the junior church lesson, you're welcome to head down there with her now. You don't need to go if you don't want to. You're welcome to stay. But she does have something prepared for you. We'd love to have you down there, so feel free to join. As for the rest of us, that long gospel, the story of the resurrection of Jesus' friend Lazarus, plainly sets a frame for all the readings that are before us this morning. Plainly, all the readings are about resurrection, the fact that God is capable of doing it. But an interesting thing happens if you take Ezekiel and the Psalm separately from the other readings. Because you heard the story of Lazarus, you might think to yourself, well, it's still about resurrection because the story of Ezekiel is the valley of the dry bones, right? Them rattling bones, as the famous song says. It's the story of God's ability to raise even dry bones from the dead. But if you didn't have the story of Lazarus to look at, and you had just the Old Testament like the rabbis of old, I think you'd see something quite different. And I say that not just because I'm throwing my opinion out there, but because I looked into the way they read this text, Ezekiel particularly. You would get more than the fact that God is omnipotent. You get more than the fact that if he wants to raise the dead, he can. What you'd get if you separated Ezekiel out in particular, and Psalm 130 as well, is that God is the ultimate validator. You know what validation is in person-to-person communication? I see some nodding yes, some looking at me blankly. So I'll give you a brief description so that we're all on the same page. Validating is making sure that when somebody shares a struggle they're having or some pain that they're having, that before you get into that mode where you say, okay, well, here's what we do. Or, don't be so sad. Your life is pretty good. You still got your health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, before you get into that mode, validating is taking a moment to say, I get why that bothers you like that. It makes perfect sense. Your feelings are valid, which is what, validating comes from, right? The way you feel makes perfect sense given the circumstances. I feel the weight of it myself even as you talk about it. Validation, as it turns out, has now been quite extensively studied. If all you ever did was validate people's feelings, that turns out not to be good, because then you're just wallowing in the difficulty and never getting past it. But if you go straight to, hey, things aren't that bad, or, here's something we can do to fix the situation, if you go straight to that without validating, it turns out that no matter what strategy you offer afterward, comes to the person who's struggling in a negative light and almost never gets implemented. If you want to help somebody, if you truly care for them, and you want to get them past something they're struggling with, the most recent research, you have to start by validating their feelings. Even if you don't feel that way yourself or couldn't imagine that in the same circumstance you would, or you think they're blowing it completely out of proportion. If you don't validate their feelings yourself, there may well be something wrong with you, as there is with most of us. You're not feeling what they're feeling. And you're not connecting with them in such a way that they feel somebody is on their side.
You can't.
God, as it turns out, is the ultimate validator, despite the fact that he's all-knowing and all-powerful. And therefore, he could simply say, no matter what our complaint, not to worry. I know exactly what to do, because I'm God, and I care for you, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. Now, that's not a bad thing to do, especially given where he's at. He can explain why you're suffering in the way that you're suffering. He can understand it fully, and he can absolutely summon the power to fix the situation. And yet, look at Psalm 130, which he inspired by the power of his Spirit to include in the scriptures that we have. Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. That doesn't sound like a God who wants you to immediately understand how to fix the situation that you're in. That sounds like a God who's willing to acknowledge, who's willing to validate the pain that you're in as a result of the struggle. And Ezekiel 37 here, well, it may sound like he's going straight to a solution when you get to the last paragraph of it. That's not exactly the way that it works. Because you look at the complaint, verse 11, all right, then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, we are cut off. Somebody might well say, well, you're taking it a little bit too far, Israel. You're plainly not dead. You're still alive. But by the way, the situation here is over the course of many centuries, throughout many royal kingdoms, many royal reigns under the sons of David, the family lineage of David. This nation had been sometimes faithful to the Lord and often not faithful to the Lord. The northern Israel had been almost entirely unfaithful, and they were removed from the land over 100 years prior to this. They were just taken away. They were conquered by the Assyrians took them out. Put other people in their place. The situation now, the reason why they say our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, we are cut off, is because the southern tribes, Judah, where Jerusalem is, they survived the Assyrian onslaught and kept going on. And yet there were prophets saying, guys, if you don't straighten up, the same thing will happen to you. And now the people are offering this complaint because guess what happened? They didn't completely straighten up. Again, they still had their good moments and their bad moments. They weren't listening to the Lord. They weren't growing. In fact, they were getting further away from him. And eventually God did exactly what he warned them that he would do. The Babylonians came. The Babylonians who were worse than the Assyrians. And they removed God's holy people from the land he chose for them to live in. And they were now living scattered throughout Babylonia. Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. The temple has been destroyed. Jerusalem is a wreck. And what's left of the people of God in the world, the light of the world to show who the one true God is, the Savior of all mankind, that people has been split up. They are in ruins. And they're saying, we're not just dead. We're long dead. Our bones are dried up. We're useless. Again, you could say God's not validating them because he immediately responds, verse 12, therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, my people, I'm going to open up your graves, bring you up from them, I will bring you back to the land of Israel, then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open up your graves and bring you up from I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land, and you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. He's like, we know what to do. We know how to fix this. I can take care of this for you. But if you think that's the way that God has responded to their complaint, you miss the rest of the text. He could have said, you're not dead, people. You still got your health. You still got your businesses. You still got your families. You know, you're living in a foreign land, but you're doing okay. And they were. You're doing all right there. They were doing so okay that when God eventually brought them back, when this prophecy was fulfilled and bringing them back to Jerusalem, a lot of them didn't leave. In fact, the vast majority of them didn't leave. They liked their life after 70 years in the Babylonian Empire. That's a couple generations of kids. You got grandparents that visit their grandchildren in Babylonia. You got to understand why a lot of people didn't want to go back to the wreck of Jerusalem. God could have said, hey, it's okay. You guys are fine. You're not dead. One day we'll turn all this around because you're going to be okay. But the vision is of a valley full of dry bones. He's acknowledging their feeling. He could have said, 'tis but a flesh wound and you're going to recover. But instead he gives Ezekiel, he pulls Ezekiel into this vision. The hand of the Lord was upon me. He wasn't even given the option of, do you want to see this or no? No, he takes Ezekiel and he takes him to this valley. And he says, look at it. And if you look at the first few verses there, he says, you led back and forth among them. I saw great many bones on the floor. He asked me, man, can these bones live? And he's like, oh man, you alone know that question because I've seen bones that are dry in a valley before. Those bones don't. It's not like this person died a few minutes ago and we can pound on their chest and maybe they'll breathe again. It's not even 4 days in the tomb, is it? A valley of dry bones. The only context in which people of that day would have understood that, and we don't really experience this anymore, they would have understood that as a valley of great slaughter. An army that got caught in the kill box, as they say. They're in a valley and they're surrounded by the enemy army, and they're slaughtered in such large numbers that there aren't enough people to go back and bury them. He hasn't just acknowledged their feelings. He has created a version of their feelings in this vision that is the most extreme version of what they're saying. I bet when they said our bones are dried out, some of them meant I got no strength left. My strength is all sapped away. I'm run like a person lost in the desert dying of thirst. And he's like, I hear you. I hear you. Some of you feel even worse. And I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case. Back and forth. Look at it, Ezekiel. Look at what has happened to the people of God. Can this possibly become a living army again? You alone know, God. Because this looks bad. He's the ultimate validator. He doesn't just take a moment. He creates the vision of a miracle that starts with the worst version of how they might possibly feel, given the circumstances. And then he shows them. But I can fix this. I can deliver you from this. I can take care of this. I hope you feel that. Because I hear from my brothers and sisters from time to time a similar feeling. You know what I'm talking about? Like the world has left Christ behind. Like we look around and we look for people like us and churches like us, and it seems like they're just all dying out. And we feel like dead man walking. God doesn't say, buck up, little camper. It's You still have your health. You still have a building. You still got people coming to worship. What are you worried about? No. He hears you. He feels you. Jesus shows up at that tomb, because that's what Jesus is, right? Jesus is the ultimate validation of our feelings. Yahweh turned into human flesh to experience all our pain, all our hunger, all our frustration, all our loss. Even though he's Yahweh, so he is omnipotent and he is omniscient and he can fix the problem with the snap of his fingers, he's not going to pretend as though the problem doesn't exist and we don't feel it. How many ways could he have saved the world? I don't really know the answer to that question because I'm not God. But we can sure imagine a bunch of other ways. Like none of them involve God coming to suffer in our place. But he's the ultimate validator. He's going to feel that pain. Even though he's sinless, he's going to suffer under the weight of our guilt. So he even knows what it feels like. Though sinless, he knows what it feels like to be crushed under failure. Because that's what he bore for us. So we've been talking about on Wednesday, as he got closer and closer to that day when he knew he was going to die, he started saying things like, if you want to come after me, you got to take up your cross and follow. And we had this long discussion about how that phrase had never been said before. Take up your cross and follow me. We have lots of meaning with that phrase. No one had ever heard it in the world before. The only way you could have understood that phrase as a Jew who lived in that time is, if you follow me, you're going to end up living the life of a person who bet on the wrong Messiah and got killed as an insurrectionist as a part of a failed movement. He bore that. He felt it because God is the ultimate validator. And he knows what it is when you feel in the depths, as Psalm 130 says. And he says, that makes sense. And I can't stand for my children to be alone in there. By themselves down there. As though I would ever desert them. But he even knows what desertion by God feels like, doesn't he? What did Jesus say on the cross, quoting Psalm 22? Remember? My God, this is God saying it, remember? My God, why have you forsaken me? Out of the depths indeed. He hears, he feels. He acknowledges, he validates. He doesn't just say, no biggie, I got a plan, even though he has one. Because he's not going to play you down like that. He doesn't do that to his children that he loves and, yes, respects. Because when you feel pain at the sight of somebody's loss, like Jesus did in front of that tomb, you feel it because you are his child. And a child of God knows that's wrong. That's not okay. That hurts. And also, he doesn't give up. He does have a new way. Tendons forming over bones, muscle over that, skin over that. Doesn't matter how dry those bones are. He does know how to bring life back, and he does it faithfully. He's the ultimate validator, so that we know he's not just acting on his own, completely ignoring how we feel, as though that doesn't so much matter as long as he gets the victory. What we feel matters, and it doesn't matter how low those depths are. He will go down with us, and he'll bring us back out. Will it take time? Sometimes a lot of time. Jesus could have gone to heal Lazarus, right? He was warned in advance. Why not? I don't have all the answers, but I'm sure part of it is he's the ultimate validator. It's not okay that his friend is sick. He's going to feel that too. It's not okay that his friend dies. He's going to feel that too. And it's not okay to leave him in the tomb. Roll that stone away. I got work to do. He won't leave you either. You feel like he's far away because you failed, you've sinned, you've fallen short. He's felt that. Strange as it may sound, Yahweh in human flesh has been here to feel that. He'll join you there. He'll make sure you're not alone. And he'll bring you out. That's the power of forgiveness. When it feels like the world has passed Christ by, you have a reason to shout out, wait a minute, I think you missed something. Because they feel it too. They feel all the wrong things. And they don't want to go to a God who's perfect and powerful and might squish them in the process of fixing the problem. And you're able to run up and say, that's not who he is. He's the ultimate validator. He feels what you're feeling. He knows what you've gone through. He knows how to bring about life from death even. And he's done it. Forgiveness means he's letting all the failure just go. He's not going to count it against us. He's going to bring us back to the house. And he's going to treat us like we never left, with the exception of the big welcome home party. How you feel matters to your God. Never forget and never make light of your feelings or somebody else's when they're struggling. But remember, before they pass you by, there's a reason God's the ultimate validator. Because he wants you to hear his solution. Forgiveness. And with the power of forgiveness, the power of the Spirit, the wind, the breath. It doesn't matter if you are dry bones. Prophesy to the dry bones, Son of Man. And Ezekiel could have said, dry bones don't, I don't know if you know this, God, but dry bones don't listen. I suspect God would have said, let me repeat myself. Prophesy to the dry bones, Son of Man. I've got a rattle I want you to hear. Well, they're standing, but there's no life. No problem. Prophesy to the breath. You know, breath is the same word as a wind and spirit in Hebrew. Did you know that? It's important to know. Prophesy to the breath. Well, breath is just breath. Wind is just wind. Not my wind. Not my spirit. You tell it to go. You tell it to breathe in. You tell it to bring life. That's the power of forgiveness. That's what forgiveness does. It says you may feel like you deserve to be abandoned forever, dried out in a huge mass of graves that could never be buried in the ground. But he won't leave you there. Never has, never will. The Spirit comes in ultimate validation, and the dead live. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand.